Am I too late to be their mother again? Her voice cracked, 6 years of regret trembling in every word. Two little girls stared up at her, unsure whether to step forward or run back. Ethan stood frozen, torn between the woman who once walked away and the woman who had stayed through every storm. Everywhere fell silent, even laughter stopped echoing. Because this wasn't just a question. It was a wound reopened. A home shaken. A family on the edge of being broken, or reborn. Lena stood to the side, breathing quietly through pain she never wanted to show. If he asked her to step back, she would. If the girls chose Maya, she would let them. One answer could undo everything they had built. But before Ethan spoke, Ava stepped forward, tiny hand reaching, voice barely a whisper. "Why can't we have all of you?" And suddenly, the story of this family became something no one expected. Not a battle. Not a replacement. Not a war of hearts. But a chance to rewrite what love and family truly mean. The first sound every morning in that tiny apartment was not an alarm, but a whisper of movement, Ethan rolling carefully from the bed so two little bodies wouldn't wake. He always lay between them, their hands loosely holding onto his shirt like small anchors. Even in sleep, they clung to him, as if afraid the world might steal him away the way it once stole someone else. He moved quietly to the kitchen, where the fridge hummed with tired effort. Shelves were neat, but not full, 3 eggs left in the carton, bread that was almost finished, apples a little soft but still good for slicing. He cracked eggs into a pan, and the gentle sizzle filled the silence like a soft song. Coffee brewed, cheap, strong, bitter, but necessary. Outside, a bus groaned down the street. Pipes clanged. A neighbor's baby cried. The city was waking, but in their home, morning was sacred. Little footsteps appeared behind him. Ava, hair wild, bare in one hand, climbed onto a stool. "You made hearts again?" she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. He smiled. "Of course. Only my favorite girl gets heart pancakes." She gasped. "But I'm your favorite." He winked. "Don't tell Arya." Right on cue, Arya appeared, messy curls, blanket trailing behind like a cape. She saw her sister smiling and immediately pouted. "You love her more," she declared dramatically. He knelt, kissed her forehead. "My heart is big enough for 2 queens." They ate slowly, talking about everything and nothing. Why birds don't fall when they sleep. Who named the sky? Whether God likes pancakes. Ethan laughed, real laughter, the kind that softened years from his face. After breakfast, chaos began. Toothbrush battles, sock hunts, spilled juice, hair that refused to be tamed. He knelt on the floor with hair ties in his mouth, one girl on each knee, fingers working through knots carefully because he remembered too well the screams of tangled combs. Ava loved pink bows. Arya hated anything that wasn't purple. By the time they were dressed, Ethan was sweating like he'd run a marathon. School was a 10-minute walk, but with twins, it took 30. They stopped to look at ants, flowers, clouds shaped like elephants. They asked questions he had no textbook for. If Mama was here, would she walk with us too? He paused only half a second, just enough for pain to flicker like shadow. "Maybe," he whispered. They reached school. 2 goodbye kisses. 1 extra hug from Arya. And every day, Ethan stood by the gate for a moment after they ran inside, not because he needed to, but because letting them go, even for a few hours, always felt like handing his heart to the world. Work was long. Hard. Loud. His uniform smelled of metal and sweat, and his feet hurt before lunch. But every time exhaustion whispered give up, he pictured 2 bright smiles waiting at 3 p.m. He lived for pickup time. The twins burst out like fireworks, their laughter igniting everything weary inside him. They fought to tell their day first, words tumbling over each other, little hands tugging his sleeve. Sometimes teachers smiled at him, sometimes they nodded sympathetically, sometimes they avoided eye contact. Everyone knew he was alone. Some admired it. Some pitied it. Evening was homework and rice and beans and dancing to cartoon songs they never outgrew. After prayers and goodnight kisses, Ethan sat at the table alone with overdue bills, rubbing his forehead as numbers blurred. He hid the stress like people hide broken walls behind fresh paint. Some nights he cried, quietly, over kitchen sinks and rent statements. Tears nobody saw. Love nobody measured. Days turned into weeks. Joy threaded through struggle. There were tantrums, lost shoes, missing homework, a broken shoe he stitched by hand. Arya had nightmares 1 month, staying awake until sunrise so she could sleep only when his heartbeat soothed her. Ava one day said she wished she had a mommy like other girls. He nearly broke. But the love between them grew like an unshakable tree, roots deep, branches wide. Mrs. Briggs, the neighbor, slowly became family, reading stories on rainy evenings, teaching the girls how to knit crooked scarves, sending soup when money was thin. And Ethan never said thank you enough, but she understood. Gratitude lived in his eyes. Life was not perfect, but it was theirs. Warm, heavy, beautiful. And this was only the beginning. Morning didn't arrive in a rush anymore. It crept in, pale and reluctant, through thin curtains that fluttered with cold air. Ethan woke to the small weight of Arya's foot pressed against his ribs and Ava curled like a kitten beneath his arm. The twins breathed in unison, the soft rhythm of children who still slept without worry. He lay there for a moment, just watching them. Peaceful faces. Tiny hands. Safety. His heart swelled painfully with the knowledge that he had to fight harder today. He eased himself out of bed, careful not to wake them. The floorboards groaned softly as he moved through the dim room, legs tired before the day had even begun. The kettle hissed. He prepared oatmeal because it was cheap and could stretch across multiple mornings if he measured carefully. He sliced the last apple into 2 nearly perfect halves, one for each girl. No fruit for him. He didn't mind. The twins wouldn't notice that part, and that was what mattered. When Ava and Arya finally woke, their giggles filled the kitchen like sunlight. They touched his chin with sticky fingers, told him dreams about talking squirrels and dancing clouds, and he laughed with them, even though exhaustion tugged behind his eyelids like sandbags. He packed their school bags, braided their hair with trembling fingers that had washed more dishes this month than hours slept, and walked them to school. The wind bit through his thin jacket. He ignored it. Bills waited at home. Rent. Power. Medical checkup fees for Arya's cough that still came and went like an unwelcome memory. At work the manager watched him with a tight mouth that always looked like it was holding back disapproval. Ethan worked at a small local delivery company, sorting packages, loading vans, carrying more than his muscles were prepared for. He moved quickly, lifting box after box, his back screaming yet he kept his breath steady. He couldn't lose this job. Not now. But life has a way of testing what you think you cannot bear. That week, the school called twice, once because Arya had forgotten her lunchbox, and once because Ava fell during recess and scraped her knees. Each time, Ethan left work early. Each time, the manager sighed, pinched the bridge of his nose, and reminded him that the company needed reliability. Ethan apologized, voice low, shoulders bowed, like a man shrinking beneath the weight of his choices, though he would have made them again. Friday arrived with rain, heavy, punishing, the kind that felt personal. Ethan arrived late after running through the downpour with the girls under one umbrella, their coats wrapped around them like makeshift armor. He dripped water across the warehouse as he clocked in. The manager called him to the office, no anger this time, just tired disappointment. They let him go. The words landed like stones. He nodded, whispered I understand, and left with his box of belongings, mostly old gloves, a cracked water bottle, and a picture of the twins taped to the wall beside his station. Outside, the rain greeted him like cold applause for losing. He didn't tell the girls. He couldn't. Instead, he made pancakes for dinner, extra fluffy, decorated with tiny chocolate chips. They danced in the kitchen while music played from the old radio that sometimes crackled like aging bones. He watched them spin and felt tears rise, but blinked them away before anyone noticed. Night came, thick and unforgiving. After bedtime stories and kisses on 2 foreheads, he sat alone at the dining table with overdue bills spread like an accusing crowd. His hands shook as he added numbers, crossed them out, tried again. Rent was due in 9 days. Electricity in 12. Arya needed another inhaler soon. He rubbed his temples hard, trying to chase away panic. He stepped outside for air, leaving the door slightly open to hear if the twins cried. The street was empty, only street lamps and the sound of distant engines. He stood under the rain-soaked night sky, breath turning cold. The weight on his chest finally broke through his wall of endurance. He sank onto the steps, elbows on knees, face in hands. His shoulders trembled silently as tears soaked his palms. He cried like a man who had held too much for too long. He didn't hear footsteps until a gentle voice spoke behind him. "You shouldn't sit like that in the cold, dear. You'll get sick." It was Mrs. Eleanor Briggs, their elderly neighbor with silver hair tied in a bun and eyes that carried decades of stories. She held a thermos of warm tea and a knitted shawl over her arm. She didn't ask what was wrong. She didn't push him to talk. She simply sat beside him, placed the shawl gently over his shoulders, and handed him the cup. He tried to smile. It came out broken. "Long day?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Long year." She didn't respond with advice or pity. She just rested her frail hand on his, a small human connection that felt like light in a dark place. "You're doing your best," she said, voice steady like a heartbeat. "And sometimes, survival itself is heroic." He swallowed, eyes stinging again, but this time the tears felt softer, almost warm. That night, Mrs. Briggs sent over homemade soup and offered to watch the twins on days he needed help. Ethan hesitated, pride gnawing at him, but eventually nodded. She smiled, the kind that said she had been waiting for him to accept. Days passed slowly. He searched for jobs, any jobs, but most required hours he couldn't manage with school pickup times. He worked temporary labor shifts where he could, some lasting only a day, some paying barely enough for groceries. He came home exhausted, but still lifted the girls onto his back, still read stories, still tucked blankets up to their chins. Every sacrifice was quietly made. Every fear privately carried. And yet, in all this darkness, something new was about to enter his world. Because the next week, when he walked his daughters to school, a new teacher greeted them at the gate with a warm smile that reached her eyes. Miss Lena Hart. And her arrival would change everything. The first day Ethan saw Miss Lena Hart, he thought she was just another teacher passing through, someone who would teach, smile, and go home to a life with fewer cracks than his own. But there was something about her presence that felt calming. Maybe it was the softness in her voice when she greeted each child by name, or the way she bent down to eye level when speaking to them, as though their words mattered just as much as any adult's. Ava shyly hid behind Ethan's coat. Aria, bold but thoughtful, studied Lena with curious eyes. "These must be the famous twins I've heard so much about," Lena said warmly. Ethan blinked. "You've heard about them?" "Oh, absolutely. Miss Valerie told me I'd fall in love with them. I think she was right." Aria grinned first. Ava peeked out second. Lena extended her hand, not to shake, but to offer a high five, as if the morning deserved celebration. Small palms met hers. 2 soft slaps. A giggle. A spark of trust. Ethan watched the interaction more carefully than he intended. He was used to doing everything alone, surviving alone, fighting alone. Help was something he rarely reached for, partly out of fear it wouldn't last. But Lena smiled at him, tired but kind, as if she saw through the exhaustion he wore like an invisible coat. "You're their father, right?" "Yes. Ethan Hayes." "Well, Mr. Hayes," she said, adjusting a stack of folders under her arm, "you're raising 2 remarkable girls." He nodded, slowly, carefully, as though accepting the compliment required permission. That was how it began. Days unfolded like gentle chapters. Ethan noticed the girls came home speaking about Miss Lena, the way children speak about imaginary heroes. She read them stories about underwater kingdoms. She helped Ava learn to tie her shoes. She listened when Aria talked about spaceships, even though it took Aria 3 minutes of stuttering excitement just to describe the first star. Ethan saw her again during pickup. The sky burned orange behind her, the kind of sunset that softens even the hardest memories. She waved, not politely, but warmly. The girls ran to her before running to him, and he realized how much they trusted her already. One windy afternoon, as leaves skated across the street like little dancers, Lena asked him gently, "Would you like to come to the class reading day next Friday? We're inviting parents to read aloud. The girls told me you do voices when you read them stories." Ethan's cheeks warmed. Voices. Yes, silly voices, exaggerated and playful, back when the world still felt safe. I could try," he murmured. The truth? He was terrified. Of reading aloud. Of rooms full of people. Of being judged as the father who always looked tired, who didn't bring fancy lunches, who never arrived in a car. But something inside whispered that maybe, just maybe, he could still give his daughters one more memory to hold on to. Reading day arrived with nerves coiling tight in his stomach. He woke early. Ironed his only decent shirt. Practiced 3 stories in the mirror until he didn't recognize the man blinking back at him. Mrs. Briggs watched the girls that morning while he reviewed his pages one last time, hands trembling. He arrived at the school like a man stepping into unknown territory. Parents chatted nearby with confidence he envied. Teachers moved like sunlight. Children waited on bright mats scattered with excitement. When it was his turn to read, he almost said he couldn't. His throat dried, his breath stuttered. But then he saw them, Ava and Aria, eyes shining, small hands waving, cheeks lifted with pride. And suddenly, he stood taller. He read the star who lost her light. He gave the characters voices, a deep voice for the old moon, a squeaky one for the baby star, a slow one for the sleepy comet. Children giggled. Teachers smiled. Even parents leaned forward. But most importantly, his daughters glowed. They beamed like he was the sun, as if nothing in the room mattered except him. Lena watched too, quietly, with hands folded and eyes soft. When he finished, there wasn't applause, there was something better. Silence. A full, gentle silence of hearts listening. Then the clapping came, loud, warm, real. After the class dismissed, Lena approached him with a smile that reached somewhere deeper than kindness. "You were wonderful, Ethan." He breathed out, shaky, as though her words were oxygen he'd been missing. "Thank you. It's been a long time since anyone said that." She hesitated, then asked softly, "Do you have work right now?" He stiffened. Pride tried to rise. Fear followed. She raised her hand gently, as if calming storm waves. "I'm not judging. I'm asking because we need someone to help with the school library renovation next month. Painting, lifting, organizing books. It's part-time, but paid. And I thought of you." The world paused. Not salvation, but a doorway. One he hadn't had in months. He exhaled slowly, voice almost breaking. Yes. I'd be grateful." And she smiled the kind of smile that plants hope like seeds in winter. The library job came with more than income, it came with purpose. Ethan worked after school hours while the girls stayed in an activity room nearby. He painted shelves deep blue. Fixed broken tables. Sorted donations with careful hands. Lena often stayed late too, grading papers, humming softly to herself, sometimes talking with him about books and childhood memories. They became familiar in that quiet way two lonely hearts do, slowly, steadily, gently. He noticed she always carried a thermos of chamomile tea. She noticed he always rubbed his wrist when worried. She told him she loved constellations. He told her the girls still slept with their baby blankets. One evening, when the twins colored picture books on the floor and Lena rearranged storytime cushions, she said, "You're doing so much for them. They're lucky to have you." He paused, roller brush dripping paint, and whispered, "I'm lucky to have them. They're why I breathe." A silence followed, comfortable, not empty, like two souls resting beside each other without touching. But somewhere in the quiet, a new thread wove between their lives. Not romance, not yet. Just connection. Just possibility. And slowly, life began to change. But peace rarely comes without shadows. Because unseen beyond the edges of their fragile happiness, something old was moving, a thread of the past pulling closer. The twins' mother. And she was about to return. Life settled into a gentle rhythm like the turning of seasons. Mornings became warmer, not because the weather changed, but because laughter returned to their small house. The twins told stories over breakfast, sometimes tripping over each other's sentences. Ethan packed lunchboxes with care, little handwritten notes tucked inside, drawing of a sun, a heart, two stick-figure girls holding hands. He walked them to school with pride instead of fear, kissed their cheeks without glancing over his shoulder for bad news. The library renovation became more than work, it became escape, purpose, healing. Every evening he painted one more section, sanded one more table, polished one more forgotten chair. Each stroke of the brush felt like rewriting his life, slowly covering old scars with new color. Lena worked across the room some evenings, grading, humming, sometimes reading aloud from books she thought he might like. The girls adored her, they drew pictures of her holding their hands, added stickers to her name on homework sheets. She didn't replace their mother, nothing could, but she became part of their world in soft, steady ways. Weeks passed like chapters, pages turning gently. Until one Thursday morning. The twins were tying their shoes by the doorway, arguing about whether cats could talk to birds. Ethan stood behind them, fixing the zipper on Arya's backpack, when a letter slid through the mail slot with a quiet tap. He almost ignored it. But something about the handwriting, small, slanted, painfully familiar, froze him. He tore it open slowly. "Ethan, I know I left. I know I broke more than promises. I want to see the girls. Please. Maya." His breath hitched, like the air had turned to glass. He stood still so long that Arya tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, are we late?" He folded the letter, slipped it into his back pocket, and forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "No, sweetheart. Let's go." They walked to school in morning light that felt strangely dim. He held each small hand tightly, perhaps too tightly, as if afraid they might disappear. He didn't tell Lena. Not yet. How could he? The letter felt like a ghost at his heels. Days became heavier. The twins still laughed, bright and unbroken, but Ethan's smile strained like fabric stretched too thin. At work, he dropped tools twice. At night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling while shadows crawled across the walls. Maya's letter stayed beneath his pillow, edges worn from his fingers tracing them, trying to understand. She had disappeared 4 years ago, vanished into her own darkness. No warning. No goodbye. Just silence, leaving him with 2 babies and a heart full of unanswered questions. To let her back in felt like opening a locked door during a storm. And yet, there was guilt. A quiet whisper. Do the girls deserve to know her? He didn't know. One afternoon, after library hours ended, Lena found him sitting on the floor beside unfinished shelves, elbows on knees, letter open in his hands. He didn't hear her approach until she knelt beside him. I've been calling you, she said gently. You didn't answer. He blinked up at her, tired eyes, red-rimmed from sleepless nights. I got a letter. From who? He hesitated too long. That was answer enough. Lena's voice softened, barely above a whisper. Their mother? Silence. Heavy. Fragile. He nodded. Her hand hovered near his, unsure whether to touch, to comfort, to step back. She chose honesty instead. How do you feel? He let out a broken laugh, one that wasn't amusement, but disbelief. I don't know. Angry. Afraid. Confused. Part of me wants to slam the door in her face. Another part wonders if I'm robbing them of something they'll resent me for later. Lena listened, spine straight, eyes warm but steady. Protecting them isn't selfish, Ethan. Wanting peace isn't wrong. But, whatever you choose, don't choose it alone. You don't have to. The room went quiet, the kind of quiet where 2 hearts breathe near each other. He stared at the letter. Soft paper. Sharp memory. I'm scared she'll break them, he whispered. Lena exhaled slowly, like releasing her own ache. And I'm scared you'll carry this alone until it tears you. That night, after he put the twins to bed, they sat in his small living room, not close, not touching, but near enough to share silence without drowning. The rain tapped lightly against the windows, gentle but persistent. He finally looked at her. What if I agreed to let her see them? Supervised. Just once. To know if she's changed. Lena's eyes held no judgment, only concern. If you do, I'll be there. You won't face it alone. Her words were simple. But to a man who had survived years with no one to lean on, they felt like hands catching him just as he started to fall. A week later, Maya returned. Not dramatic. Not loud. Not chaotic. She arrived quietly, at a park where Ethan had chosen neutral ground. The sun was soft, the grass warm under children's feet. The twins played near the swing set, unaware of the moment that was about to change everything. Maya approached slowly, hair longer, eyes older, posture uncertain. She looked at the girls like someone staring into a past they no longer owned. Ethan stood tense, arms crossed, heart hammering like thunder behind ribs. Hello, Ethan. Her voice trembled, not weak, but human. He didn't answer right away. He couldn't. She swallowed. They've grown. He followed her gaze to the twins, Arya pushing Ava on the swing, laughter like bells through the air. His throat tightened. You left when they were babies, he replied quietly. Now they are children. And you're a stranger. The truth hung there, heavy, painful, necessary. Maya nodded, tears filling her eyes. I know. I didn't expect forgiveness. Just a chance to try. Lena stood nearby, not intruding, not interfering, simply present. A lighthouse. Ethan finally called gently. Ava, Arya, come here, sweethearts. 2 small heads turned. 2 pairs of footsteps pattered across the grass. They looked at Maya, confusion first, curiosity next. Arya asked the question Ethan feared and expected in equal measure. Daddy, who is she? He knelt, level with them, voice steady but trembling inside. She's your mother. Time froze. The world did not break, not yet, but the ground shifted. Ava blinked, slow tears forming like raindrops. Arya stared, wide-eyed, searching his face for truth. Maya knelt too, voice cracking. I'm so sorry. I know I hurt you. I know I left. But I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. Ava stepped back, retreating into safety. Arya moved closer, drawn by blood, by memory she didn't remember. And Ethan watched, heart splitting between protection and possibility. This was not reunion. This was beginning of a question. The answer would take act after act to unfold. And as the sun lowered and shadows lengthened across the grass, no one knew what tomorrow would hold. The past had returned. But the future was still unwritten. The weeks that followed were made of fragile steps. Maya did not demand instant motherhood. She didn't push boundaries or rush affection. She came to the park once a week, sat on the bench at a respectful distance, and let the girls come when they felt ready. Sometimes Arya ran to her with drawings. Sometimes Ava wouldn't look at her at all. Both reactions were real. Both were human. Ethan let them unfold naturally. He watched with equal parts hope and fear, one hand always ready to protect, even as he tried to loosen the grip. Maya told stories of where she'd been, not all at once, not dramatic, not defended. Pieces. Small pieces, offered like stones returned to their rightful place. Anxiety. Postpartum depression. Feeling unfit. Running instead of asking for help. Years spent rebuilding her life, recovering, trying to earn the right to someday face them again. Ethan listened. Not forgiving, just hearing. Healing never comes in a straight line. It curves, stalls, crashes, breathes again. Sometimes, after visits, Ava cried quietly in bed. "Daddy, what if she leaves again?" He held her close, kissed her forehead, whispered, "If she goes, I'll still be here. I always will." Arya asked different questions. Why did she leave? He never lied. He never painted her as villain or saint. She was hurting. She made choices that broke things. People break sometimes. But they can learn to build again. Arya nodded slowly, not understanding fully, but trusting him enough to try. Lena remained steady, a quiet pillar at the edge of their evolving life. She didn't replace Maya. She didn't compete. She didn't assume. She simply stayed. She helped Ava paint rainbows when her heart felt heavy. She listened when Arya rambled about stars. She made tea for Ethan on evenings when his eyes looked like he'd been at war with his thoughts. Sometimes they talked long after the girls were asleep, soft voices in a room gently lit by an old lamp. Not romantic talk. Not yet. Just two adults sharing space without judgment. She told him about her own heartbreak once, a fiancé who left a month before their wedding. A love that crumbled without warning. Loneliness that pushed her into teaching, where children's laughter became her therapy. Ethan listened, eyes warm with understanding. Pain recognized pain. And neither tried to fix the other. There is a kind of love that grows in silence, roots deepening beneath the soil long before flowers ever show. One evening, rainy and slow, Maya asked if she might come to the house for the first time, only to help the girls bake cookies. Ethan agreed cautiously, watching her like a man guarding treasure made of glass. The kitchen was too small for so much history. Ava stood on a chair mixing batter with nervous focus. Arya dumped chocolate chips with reckless delight. Maya wiped flour from their noses, timid but smiling. And for the first time, Ethan saw a glimpse of the mother she wanted to be, not perfect, not healed, but present. Lena came later with new library books for the twins, unaware that Maya was there. When she stepped through the doorway and saw her, hesitation flickered like lightning. The room held 3 adults, 2 children, 1 complicated history. Ava hid behind Lena's leg. Arya stayed beside Maya, uncertain but curious. Lena forced a gentle smile. "Hello, Maya." Maya nodded, voice soft. "Hi, Lena. I hope I'm not intruding." Lena shook her head, though her heart twisted. "No. You're here for them. That matters." For the first time, the women who stood at opposite ends of the twins' story faced one another, not as rivals, but as 2 people who cared about the same children. The evening unfolded with cautious peace. Maya read a story to Ava. Lena helped Arya decorate cookies with too many sprinkles. Ethan washed dishes between glances, watching worlds blend that once lived oceans apart. But when night ended and the door closed behind Maya, Ethan found Lena sitting at the dining table alone, fingers intertwined, eyes distant. He sat across from her. "You okay?" She gave a small, aching smile. "She's trying. And that's good. But part of me is scared too. Scared that one day you won't need me anymore. Scared I'm just a temporary chapter." Ethan's breath caught. He reached across the table, gently, not to pull her close, but so she knew he wasn't letting her drift away. "You aren't a chapter, Lena. You're in the story now. Even if nothing is certain yet, you matter here. To them. To me." Her eyes shimmered. She exhaled shakily. "Then, I'll stay. Through the uncertainty. Through whatever comes." That night, after everyone was asleep, Ethan stood by the kitchen sink, fingertips grazing the cool porcelain, mind heavy with too many truths. The house felt different, fuller, yet fragile. Like a vase balanced at the edge of a table. Maya had returned. Lena was still here. And he was standing in the middle of everything, unsure of where to place his heart without breaking someone else's. He made himself tea he barely drank, listening to the faint rhythm of the twins breathing down the hallway, the sound that kept him grounded through every storm. They were his compass. His beginning. His end. Everything else, love, forgiveness, second chances, had to orbit what was best for his girls. Morning came soft and pale, like a page turning. Arya came downstairs first, curls wild, cheeks wrinkled from sleep. She crawled into Ethan's lap without a word, as she always did on days she thought too much. Her voice was tiny against his chest. "Daddy, can someone have two mommies?" He didn't answer quickly. Some questions require silence before words. "I think," he said slowly, "a child can have as many people who love them as the world is willing to give." Arya nodded, as if she expected nothing less. Later that week, Maya asked if she could take the girls to a children's museum. Ethan agreed, but only if Lena came too. Not as a test. Not as competition. But because consistency mattered. Stability mattered. The four of them stood in the museum entrance like an unfinished puzzle, pieces that didn't fit yet, but weren't willing to be scattered again. Ava clung to Lena's hand. Arya pulled Maya toward the butterfly exhibit. Ethan walked between them, heart split but steady. They moved slowly through rooms filled with delicate wings and glass cases. Children laughed and ran around them, careless, loud, beautifully alive. Ava loosened by degrees, inching closer to Maya each time laughter pulled her guard down. Arya painted paper butterflies and stuck glitter to her hair like a crown. And somewhere between the display of metamorphosis and the exit doors, Ethan noticed it. Ava reached for Maya's hand. Not for long. Not with a smile. Just a touch, brief, trembling, brave. It was a miracle as small as an eyelash and as huge as the ocean. Maya froze for half a second, then let her fingers curl gently around her daughter's, as if holding a bird that might fly away if gripped too tightly. Lena watched with quiet ache, but not bitterness. She knew this moment didn't erase her place. It simply expanded the circle. This was healing, slow, uneven, real. When they returned home that evening, after books and baths and warm pajamas, Ethan tucked the girls into bed. Ava held his hand longer than usual. "Daddy." "Yes, baby." "If she stays this time, will you be happy?" The question cut deep, not because it was painful, but because it was honest. He brushed her hair back gently. "Happiness isn't one person, sweetheart. It's love. And love grows when people try. She's trying. I'm trying. We're all learning together." Ava nodded with sleepy certainty, the kind of certainty children carry like lanterns. "Okay. I'll try too." She fell asleep before he finished whispering a good-night prayer over her. Downstairs, Lena sat on the couch, a book open but unread. When Ethan entered, she looked up, searching his face for answers he didn't yet have. He sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "We're in something complicated," he said quietly, eyes on the floor. She closed the book slowly. "Yes," she breathed. "But sometimes complicated things are the ones worth staying for." He turned to her then, really turned, seeing her strength, her vulnerability, her willingness to stand in the storm instead of running from it. "Thank you for not walking away." She smiled, tired, soft, real. "I'm here because love doesn't always start with fireworks. Sometimes it starts with showing up. Again and again." Neither reached for the other. They didn't need to. Presence was enough. Upstairs, two small girls slept with butterfly drawings drying on the windowsill. Downstairs, two adults sat in a silence that felt like possibility. And somewhere, miles away, Maya wrote in her journal, words full of hope and regret, determination and fear, promising herself that this time, she would not disappear. Spring slipped gently toward summer, and with it came shifts so subtle they were almost invisible, like the way a river carves rock only by flowing over it for years. Maya continued to visit the girls, but not every day. Sometimes once a week. Sometimes twice. Sometimes the girls were excited. Sometimes they were withdrawn. Healing, after all, is not a staircase, it is waves. One afternoon, Maya took the twins to the library with Ethan's careful blessing. Arya couldn't stop talking the whole way there. She wanted unicorn books and space books and maybe a new notebook where she could write poems like Miss Lena. Ava stayed close to Maya's side, one hand slipping lightly into hers only when she thought no one was watching. Maya cherished that. She didn't celebrate loudly or tell anyone. Small progress is like a seed. If you shout at it, it stops growing. Inside the library's quiet halls, Maya guided them to the children's section. They sat on the carpet, choosing stories, voices soft between shelves. Ava eventually rested her head against her mother's arm, and Maya almost stopped breathing, afraid she'd ruin the moment simply by moving. Then, Ava whispered, barely audible. "Did you miss us?" Maya's eyes stung. "Every day," she whispered back. "Even when I didn't know how to come back." Ava nodded once, a child's forgiveness, not full, but open like a door left ajar. Arya, watching, smiled without jealousy. She understood something Ava didn't say. They both needed different healing. Meanwhile, Ethan and Lena found a rhythm. Not romance. Not yet. But steadiness. They cooked together once a week, simple meals, lots of laughter, occasional tears when memories hit too close. Ethan told her about sleepless nights when the twins as infants cried until dawn. Lena told him about standing in a wedding dress alone in a bedroom she once shared with someone who promised forever. Pain, when spoken aloud, becomes less heavy. Some nights, they watched movies after the girls slept, sitting on opposite sides of the couch, moving closer only when silence stopped feeling dangerous. Their connection was not fire, it was a candle flame. Small, gentle, persistent. But life has a way of testing the things that begin quietly. It started with a phone call. "Maya." Her voice shaking. "The job offer came through. A good one. A stable one. But it's in another city." The words hit Ethan like cold water. "How far?" 3 hours. Too far for casual visits. Too far for weekly baking and library days. Too far for a woman still learning to be a mother again. He didn't answer immediately. He could hear her breathing, hope and fear twisting together. "I want to stay near them," she said softly. "I do. But this job means I could afford a home. Therapy. Consistency. I could build a life strong enough to hold them if they let me in." He closed his eyes, heart pulling in two directions. Jobs build futures. But distance strains healing. And choices for adults ripple through children. "I need time to think," Ethan said at last. "I know. I won't decide without you." When he hung up, he sat in silence, the kind that fills a house like thick fog. Later, he told Lena. Not because he owed her control, but because she was part of their lives now, and honesty keeps foundations from cracking later. Lena listened, quiet and steady. "If she leaves," she said, "the girls may feel abandoned all over again. But if she stays without stability, she could collapse under the pressure and break them anyway." Ethan exhaled. The truth hurt either way. "What do I do?" She looked at him, eyes soft and impossibly kind. "You don't choose for her. You choose for them. Even if that means she gets hurt. Even if you do too." He swallowed hard. He knew she was right. The next visit was tense. The twins sensed it, children always do. Ava watched Maya closely, almost fearfully, as if waiting for her to disappear. Arya grew extra affectionate, clinging to every moment like she was trying to save it. They played board games at the kitchen table. Maya laughed too loudly. Ethan smiled too gently. No one acknowledged the storm quietly forming beneath the floorboards. When the girls ran upstairs for pajamas, Ethan and Maya finally faced each other, truly faced each other. "You got the job," he said quietly. "Yes." "And you want to take it?" "Yes." He nodded slowly, a man holding two truths like water in bare hands. You leaving could reopen wounds that are barely starting to close. But staying might trap you in a life you're not ready for yet. She blinked, grateful he understood the impossible. "What do you think I should do?" He looked toward the stairs where small footsteps echoed. "Whatever you choose, don't vanish. Not again. Not without explanation. Not without a bridge back to them." Her voice broke. "I won't disappear this time, Ethan. Even if I go, I'll stay in every way I can." He believed her, cautiously, painfully, hopefully. Then came the night that changed everything. A storm rolled in, violent, pounding rain, thunder like a heart too large for its body. Power flickered out. The girls crawled into Ethan and Lena's arms on the couch, shaking with fear. Lightning split the sky, and suddenly, a scream. Ava, clutching her chest, struggling to breathe. Panic surged through the room. It happened fast, inhaler missing, darkness thick, fear louder than thunder. Ethan held her. Lena called emergency. Arya cried. Maya, arriving for a scheduled visit, burst through the door drenched in rain the same moment the ambulance lights filled the street with blue. The crisis folded all of them back into one heartbeat. Maya held Ava's hand inside the ambulance. Lena kept Arya calm in the waiting room. Ethan stood between them, shaking, praying, terrified. One child's breath pulled every adult into alignment. Pain didn't divide them. Love did not compete. Family, broken, patched, complicated, stood as one. That was the night none of their lives fit in the old shape anymore. A decision had to be made. About the job. About motherhood. About love. About the future none of them could keep avoiding. And morning would demand it. The hospital smelled of disinfectant and worry. Ava slept with oxygen tubes running gently beneath her nose, chest rising and falling like fragile paper. Her lungs had tightened from weather-triggered asthma, severe, but treatable. Doctors reassured them, but reassurance didn't erase fear. Not when a child gasps for air in your arms. Ethan sat at her bedside all night. Lena held Arya in a plastic chair, humming softly until her tiny body relaxed against her. Maya paced the hallway like someone trying to outrun her own heartbeat. 3 adults, 1 crisis, and every wall that separated them began to crumble. By morning, Ava opened her eyes, small, tired, searching. The first word she whispered was, "Mummy." But it wasn't clear which mummy. And maybe, painfully, beautifully, it didn't matter. Maya was beside her first, tears shining as she smoothed hair from her daughter's face. Lena hovered close, not trying to replace, only ready to support. Ethan stood behind them, holding a cup of cold coffee he didn't remember pouring, heart stretched wide and aching. When Ava was stable enough to leave, they returned home with medication, follow-up appointments, and a house that suddenly felt too small for everything unsaid. The storm outside had passed. Inside, another one remained. After the girls fell asleep that night, both cuddled on the same bed, hands intertwined as if protecting one another from disappearing, Ethan asked Maya and Lena to sit with him in the living room. No raised voices. No ultimatums. No anger. Just 3 people who loved the same children, trying to be brave enough to speak truth. Maya was the first to break the silence. The job offer is still waiting. They need an answer by Friday. Lena looked down at her hands, steady, but tense, as though holding her own heart in place. Ethan inhaled slowly. "If you go," he said, voice rough, "you must stay present. Video calls. Visits. Letters. Something consistent. The girls can't heal through absence again." Maya nodded, trembling, but firm. "I'll build a schedule with you. And I'll travel down twice a month. No excuses. No disappearances. Not even when it's hard." She meant it. He could see it. Years of running had left her exhausted, but wiser. Then Ethan turned to Lena. "You've stood by us through everything. I don't know what shape our future takes, with Maya rebuilding her place, with the girls still afraid, with me still learning how to breathe again. But I don't want to lose you either. Not in the shadows. Not silently." Lena's eyes glistened with tears she didn't hide. "I don't need to replace anyone. I don't need a title or a promise today. I just want to stay where I'm wanted and trusted." Ethan reached across the space between them, slowly, giving her room to pull away. She didn't. His fingers brushed hers, not claiming, but inviting. "You are wanted, Lena. Deeply." Maya watched the moment. Not bitterly, surprisingly, but with understanding. This wasn't a battle for ownership. This was a family growing in directions no one expected. She whispered, almost to herself, "They have 2 women who love them. Maybe that's not broken. Maybe that's grace." It wasn't a conclusion. It wasn't a solution. It was a start. 2 days later, Friday arrived like a heartbeat turning into a drum. Maya accepted the job. She would move, build security, stability, a foundation strong enough to hold a second chance. But she wouldn't vanish. The girls would visit every 2 weeks. She would video call every night for bedtime stories. And when they were older, maybe, slowly, they would stay with her during holidays. It hurt. It healed. Sometimes healing hurts. That evening, Maya packed quietly while the twins drew pictures for her. Ava drew a house with 2 mothers holding hands with 2 daughters. Arya drew a bridge. Thick. Wide. Unbreakable. Lena helped them color without crying, though her throat ached. Before leaving, Maya knelt in front of the girls. "I'm not gone," she whispered. "I'm just building a life strong enough to hold you, if one day you want to walk into it." Ava hugged her tightly, tears wetting Maya's shoulder. Arya pressed a drawing into her hand. "Come back even when it's hard," she said. Maya nodded, voice breaking. "I will." And then she left, not disappearing into silence, but into a future connected by threads that refused to snap. The door closed softly. The house felt emptier, but somehow more honest. And in the quiet that followed, something shifted. Not dramatic, not sudden, but real. Lena sat beside Ethan on the couch, not touching, just close enough to feel each other's warmth. He leaned back, exhausted but lighter. "She's gone," he murmured. "She'll return," Lena replied, not questioning, not threatened. Just believing. And Ethan looked at her, truly looked, at the woman who stayed through storms she didn't cause, through chaos she didn't owe, through healing that wasn't hers to demand. He reached for her hand again, not tentative this time. She took it. Not as replacement. Not as victory. But as someone choosing to stay. Outside, the night was still. Inside, something began, slow, gentle, unforced. Not a love story born from desperation. A love story earned. Summer settled in like a long exhale. The house felt different without Maya's frequent footsteps, but her presence was not gone. It lived in phone calls at bedtime, envelopes decorated with butterflies, weekends marked with anticipation. The girls missed her, but not in a way that shattered them. They missed her like sunlight, knowing it returns. And in the quiet she left behind, something else began to bloom. Not fireworks. Not a sudden rush. But warmth, gentle, patient, earned. On quiet evenings after the girls slept, Ethan and Lena found themselves drifting into shared routines. They brewed tea in the same mugs, washed dishes shoulder to shoulder, argued softly about which stories to read next. Grief and rebuilding wove them slowly together, not to replace, but to grow. One late July evening, they sat on the back porch beneath a sky bruised with sunset. Arya and Ava chased fireflies barefoot in the yard, giggling like bells in wind. Ethan watched them, two miracles he raised with trembling hands and sleepless nights. "They look happy," Lena murmured. He nodded. "They are healing. We all are, I think." The twilight wrapped them in soft silence. Lena's hand rested near his on the bench, not touching, but close enough that he felt her pulse, or maybe it was his own. "Do you ever," she hesitated, brave but cautious, "wonder what we might become when everything isn't so heavy?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. He chose his words the way a craftsman chooses wood, patiently, carefully. "I think about it," he said quietly. "But I don't want us to build something on unsteady ground. Not on loneliness. Not on pain." She nodded, the answer hurt and soothed at the same time. "I want something real," she whispered. He turned to her, eyes steady. "Then let's build real. Slowly. The way trust grows, not the way wildfire burns." Lena smiled, small, luminous, like dawn. Their hands touched then, not by accident this time. Meanwhile, in another city, Maya rebuilt herself. She rented a modest apartment. Started her new job. Went to therapy every Thursday. At night, she video-called the girls, read them stories through the screen, sang softly when Ava felt anxious, listened to Arya tell long tales about school and stars and how Lena helped them grow tomatoes in recycled yogurt cups. Sometimes those calls left Maya smiling. Sometimes they left her crying quietly into her pillow. Healing is not linear. It spirals, loops, revisits old wounds like ghosts that require gentleness instead of fear. But she stayed. She showed up. She did not run. One weekend visit, weeks later, she arrived at Ethan's door with homemade muffins and shaking hands. Ava leapt into her arms, not without hesitation, but with trust that hadn't existed months before. Arya hugged her too, quick and fierce. And Ethan saw it then. This wasn't a story of replacing one mother with another. This was a story of expanding what family could mean. Later, after the girls fell asleep piled like kittens in Maya's lap, the three adults sat at the kitchen table, not as past vs present, but as a shape still forming. Maya looked at Lena, sincerity trembling like glass. "Thank you," she said. "For loving them. For being steady when I wasn't." Lena's throat tightened. "I never wanted to take your place." "You didn't," Maya whispered. "You filled a space I left empty. And now, maybe there is room for both of us." It wasn't permission. It wasn't surrender. It was acceptance. The kind that takes months of tears to earn. Ethan watched the two women who shaped his daughter's world, feeling something loosen in his chest, a knot he'd carried for 6 years finally beginning to untangle. Family wasn't what he imagined. It was larger. Messier. Braver. And slowly, day by day, love grew. Not as replacement. Not as erasure. But as addition. Some nights, Ethan found Lena laughing with Ava on the kitchen floor, glue and glitter everywhere. Other nights, Maya and Arya FaceTimed for an hour, writing silly poems they read aloud like secrets. One evening, after the twins were in bed and the house was still, Ethan and Lena sat on the couch, closer now, comfortably so. He looked at her with a kind of tenderness that no longer needed apology. "I think I'm ready," he said softly. "For?" she asked, but her eyes already knew. "For love that doesn't have to fight to exist." Lena exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath for months. The first kiss they shared was quiet, not desperate, not claiming. A sigh. A beginning. A new chapter written carefully. No urgency. No victories. Only two people choosing each other, gently. And in another city, Maya looked at a photo the twins had mailed her, smiling, healed, held by more than one kind of love, and she whispered through a soft, aching smile. "They're growing. And so am I." Because love does not diminish when shared. It multiplies. The next morning came softly. Sunlight filtered through curtains like gold dust, catching the floating specks in the air. The house smelled of cinnamon toast and freshly cut apples. Lena always sliced them too thin, claiming even fruit deserved gentleness. Ava and Arya padded into the kitchen in mismatched pajamas, hair wild from sleep. Ethan stood at the stove flipping tiny pancakes shaped like hearts, because that was the only shape the twins requested anymore. Lena leaned against the counter, fingers brushing his as she passed him the syrup. Their touch lingered, not burning, not shy, just familiar. Ava climbed onto a chair. "Daddy, can we send Mommy a picture of breakfast?" Ethan glanced at Lena, who nodded without hesitation. "Of course," he said. He plated the pancakes, arranged strawberries into little red smiles, and the twins grinned so wide their dimples nearly swallowed their cheeks. Lena snapped the photo and sent it to Maya's phone. No tension. No territory. Just sharing. Minutes later, a voice note came back, Maya's sleepy morning voice, soft as cotton. "Those look delicious. Save me one next time, okay? I miss you both." The girls hugged the phone as if touch could travel through sound. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan felt peace settle in his bones. Not the kind that arrives because everything is perfect, but the kind earned from surviving the imperfect and choosing to keep loving anyway. After breakfast, Ethan washed dishes with sleeves rolled to his elbows. Lena dried them beside him, bumping his shoulder playfully every few plates. Her laughter was lighter now, not tentative like before. His smile was softer, not pulled tight with fear. Healing was not a line. It was a circle they walked every day. Later, on the living room floor, the twins sprawled out with markers and colored paper. They were drawing their family, and Ethan paused as he watched it take shape. 5 figures. Not 3. 3 tall, 2 small. Maya drawn in yellow beside them, sun-colored dress, smiling wide. Lena drawn in blue, calm, bright, steady. Ethan drawn in green, the color of trees, foundation, roots. Ava and Arya in pink and purple holding hands between them. No one was erased. No one replaced. Just expanded. Ethan sat quietly, absorbing it like scripture. Ava glanced up. "Daddy, is it okay if we love Mommy and Lena both?" His voice nearly broke. He knelt, pulling them into his arms with careful strength. "Sweetheart," he whispered, "love isn't a pie, it doesn't run out. Every person you love just makes your heart bigger." Ava smiled, satisfied. Arya nodded like a philosopher who already knew life's secrets. Lena watched from the couch, eyes shining. Not with jealousy. Not insecurity. But something deeper, chosen family settling naturally into place. Later that afternoon, while the girls napped tangled together under a sun-striped blanket, Ethan and Lena cleaned the playroom, picking up crayons, folding tiny dresses, carefully arranging stuffed animals into a neat army of plush guardians. Music played low from Lena's phone, the kind with pianos that feel like memories. Ethan's arm brushed hers. This time she didn't step aside. She leaned in instead. Not rushing. Not claiming. Just belonging. "We're really doing this, aren't we?" she murmured. He nodded, eyes gentle. "One slow step at a time." She rested her head briefly on his shoulder, just long enough to say "I'm here," but not long enough to assume more than they were ready for. Outside, wind moved through the garden, stirring leaves, flowers, sunlight. Inside, love moved with the same patience. The girls woke later and dragged Ethan outside to watch their tomato plants grow. Lena followed, hair tied up, cheeks glowing with that unforced happiness that comes only from peace that was earned, not gifted. And as the evening deepened, the four of them sat on the grass, dirt under their nails, laughter tangled in the air. A family, not by neat lines or perfect history, but by choice. Love did not cleanse the past. It carried it with tenderness. Because love, true love, evolves slowly. Like roots. Like seasons. Like two people rebuilding their lives with their hands still shaking, but reaching anyway. And in the softness of that moment, Ethan finally understood. Some stories are not about finding a new beginning. Some are about continuing, with more heart than before. Peace has a quiet way of revealing the edges of what still hurts. Weeks passed like warm honey, slow, golden, sweet. But underneath the laughter, underneath the tomato plants and bedtime stories, life held its breath with tender uncertainty. Not everything healed at the same pace. One late afternoon, Lena arrived at the house with a scrapbook she had made for the twins, photos of school days, picnics, drawings taped at wonky angles, ticket stubs from their very first movie night. Ava loved it instantly, pressing sparkly stickers onto the cover. Aria flipped pages carefully, reading captions Lena had written in soft, curling pen strokes. But then she reached a blank spread labeled Family Moments. Empty for now, meant for memories still coming. Aria froze. "Where do we put Mommy?" she asked quietly. Lena blinked, the question soft but sharp. "We can make a section just for her," she said gently, "or we put her here with us. However you feel." Aria looked between them, confusion in her bright eyes. "Is it okay if she's with us? Even though she doesn't live here?" Ethan crouched beside them, voice warm as afternoon sun. "Family doesn't have to live under one roof to belong on one page." Aria nodded slowly, and together they pasted Maya's picture beside theirs, not off to the side, not separate. Right in the heart of the layout. A sign of a child's love expanding without knowing it was doing something profound. But Lena felt a tremor inside her, a small, human insecurity. She smiled through it. She breathed through it. But later, while Ethan made dinner and the girls argued cheerfully over glitter colors, she sat alone at the dining table, staring at that page. She was included. She was loved. But not in the way mothers are loved. Not yet. Maybe not ever fully. A gentle ache, not jealousy, just longing. A truth she couldn't run from. That night, after the twins slept with flowers still on their cheeks and dreams still warm behind their eyes, Ethan found Lena in the living room. She sat curled under a blanket, the scrapbook open on her lap. He sat beside her silently, not demanding words, just offering presence. Her voice came barely above breath. "I don't want to be an outsider in my own heart." He understood instantly, deeply, because he'd lived that feeling too. "You're not outside," he murmured. "You're building something with us. It doesn't have to look like anyone else's version of family." She leaned her head onto his shoulder, not seeking answers, just anchor. "I know. It's just, sometimes loving them hurts a little. In a good way, I think. It means it matters." He kissed her temple, slow, certain. "Everything that matters stretches us." Meanwhile, Maya felt the stretch too, far away, holding love from a distance. Some nights she felt gratitude burning bright as fireflies. Some nights she lay awake wondering if she deserved this second chance. One Thursday, after therapy, she walked into a toy store, hesitant fingers trailing across shelves of dolls and glitter pens. She picked out matching butterfly backpacks for the twins and mailed them with a handwritten note. "For new adventures. Even the ones I'm not there to see. Love, Mommy." She didn't ask for more time. She didn't demand bigger space. She showed love in quiet offerings. The way healing often first appears. A week later, during the next scheduled visit, the twins burst through the door wearing those very backpacks, proud and radiant. Maya knelt with arms wide and they collided into her like returning tides. Later, while they drew chalk rainbows on the sidewalk, Maya and Lena found themselves side by side. Not forced, not awkward, just two women watching two little girls choose joy again. Lena spoke first, voice steady despite the tremble inside. "They love you." Maya swallowed, smile small but real. "And they love you. I see it." A pause, fragile but brave. "It scares me sometimes," Maya admitted. "Me too," Lena whispered. Two truths spoken between women who could have been rivals, but instead became mirrors reflecting different kinds of love. Not identical. Not competing. Coexisting. And that is where gentle complication lies. Not in screaming arguments. Not in ultimatums. But in the quiet courage of choosing love even when it aches. That night, Ethan tucked the twins into bed and found both women still in the living room, not far apart, but not fully close. A delicate bridge forming. Ethan exhaled, grateful, humbled, terrified in all the normal ways love demands. This wasn't a story of perfect repair. It was a story of expansion with growing pains. And they were walking it together. Slow, steady, human. As summer deepened and the rhythm of shared parenting settled into something almost graceful, a new question emerged, quietly, like a ripple across calm water. Maya asked for more time. It happened one evening after the twins' visit. They were drawing stars on the driveway with chalk, giggling over whose constellation looked most like Daddy's head. The sky was beginning to tilt toward lavender when Maya stood beside Ethan, arms folded, voice steady but vulnerable. I was thinking, maybe instead of every other weekend, I could have them for one night. A sleepover. Just the girls and me. Ethan didn't speak immediately. His breath stalled, a reflex born from years of protecting what he'd raised alone. One night away. One night without his routines, his bedtime songs, his careful watching. He knew saying no would wound something delicate. He knew saying yes would loosen a fear tightly knotted inside him. Lena watched from the porch, not involved, not interfering. Just witnessing two people renegotiating a second chance. The twins ran toward them then, chalk dust in their hair. Ava jumped into Maya's arms without hesitation. "Mommy, can we stay with you one night? Please?" Arya echoed her, eyes bright with excitement. "We could make cookies and watch the moon and read the new bedtime story." Maya laughed softly, overwhelmed by how easily love returned now. Ethan swallowed. The question moved from theoretical to real. He knelt beside them. "Let Daddy think for a bit, okay?" They nodded, trusting him even in the pause. Later that night, after Maya left and the girls were asleep, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea gone cold. Lena sat across from him, hands wrapped around her own mug like something to steady her. "You're scared," Lena said, not accusing, just naming truth. Ethan didn't deny it. "She's doing better. I see it. But I carried them alone for so long, handing over even a piece feels like letting go of air." Lena reached across the table, fingers brushing his gently. "Letting go isn't abandonment. It's believing things can grow." He stared at her, really stared, at the woman who entered their lives without replacing, who nurtured without ownership, who loved without demand. "You think I should say yes?" he asked quietly. Lena exhaled. "I think you should say not yet if your fear is louder than your trust. But if your trust is growing, even slowly, then one night might be the first brick in a bridge you'll all be grateful for later." Ethan closed his eyes. Fear tightened his chest. But beneath it, something else pulsed, cautious hope. The next morning, as sunlight spilled across the breakfast table, Ethan told the twins. "Mama can have you for one night, soon. Not right away. We'll choose a weekend together." The girls cheered, pancakes forgotten. It was small. It was monumental. Maya cried when Ethan told her later, not from triumph, but from humility. "I'll make it safe," she promised. "I'll make it gentle. I won't rush anything." He nodded, not fully fearless, but brave enough. Trust, like healing, does not leap, it steps. Meanwhile, New Balance brought new questions for Lena too. One evening she stood in the twins' room after helping them organize stuffed animals by who could be friends. She looked at the tiny shoes lined neatly by the door, the drawings taped crookedly to the wall, the laughter still echoing faintly after bedtime. And she realized something quietly enormous. She was building a life inside a home she didn't yet live in. She loved Ethan. She loved the twins. She even cared for Maya's place in their lives. But she had no title. No defined space. No future spoken out loud. Not yet. Not clearly. That night, she sat beside Ethan on the couch, legs curled under her. He read a novel. She pretended to scroll her phone but didn't turn a single page. Finally she spoke. "Where do you see us going?" "Not tomorrow, eventually." Ethan closed the book, heartbeat loud in the quiet. He didn't rush words. He weighed them like something sacred. "I see you in our future," he said softly. "With the girls. With me. But I want to do it right, not jump into something just because we're happy today. I want this to last." Her eyes softened, relief and ache woven together. "I don't need a proposal," she whispered. "I just needed to know I wasn't dreaming alone." He took her hand in both of his, not possessive, not hurried. You aren't. They stayed like that, hands intertwined, silence warm, future unspoken but present like a heartbeat you don't have to hear to believe in. And so balance took shape. Maya preparing for her first overnight with the twins. Ethan learning to open his hand without losing anyone. Lena loving with patience deeper than longing. A triangle that could have torn instead began to hold. Love, complex, layered, continued to grow. Slow. Honest. Real. The night arrived slowly, like a held breath finally released. The girls circled the house in excitement, packing tiny backpacks with the intensity of explorers preparing for an Arctic expedition. Ava insisted she needed 5 dresses for one night. Arya brought all 3 of her favorite bedtime books, because each one sounds different at Mommy's house. Ethan helped fold clothes into smaller stacks. Lena braided hair and tucked a stuffed rabbit under Ava's arm. No tension. Just care. But beneath the laughter, everyone felt the weight. Firsts are delicate things, bright with hope, sharp with fear. At the doorway, Maya stood waiting with soft eyes and trembling hands. She knelt as the twins rushed into her arms, voices bubbling like warm water. We're ready. We're sleeping at your house. Can we make pancakes in the morning? Can we stay up late just a little? Maya laughed, breathless, overwhelmed. Ethan stepped forward, handing her a small tote bag with essentials. Their hands brushed. A shared history pulsed in the space between. He looked her in the eye. You call me anytime. Even if it's small. Even if you're unsure. I will, she whispered. Thank you for trusting me with them. No ceremony. No grand goodbye. Just a hug, a promise, a new chapter turning quietly. The car pulled away with 2 tiny faces pressed to the back window, waving wildly until they disappeared around the corner. And then silence settled into the house like something unfamiliar. It felt too big without them. Too still. Ethan stood in the living room, hands awkwardly at his sides. He had imagined relief, maybe even freedom. What he felt instead was empty space. Lena watched him, not intruding, not fixing, just present. She stepped closer, fingers tracing lightly over his back. They're safe, she said softly. I know. He did. And yet, a single tear surprised him, slipping down without permission. Not grief. Not regret. Just the ache of letting go after years of holding tight. Lena cupped his cheek. You didn't lose them tonight. You opened a door. And slowly, minute by minute, the house began to exhale. At Maya's apartment, the night unfolded beautifully and clumsily. The girls helped stir pasta but spilled half the cheese. Ava dropped a spoon behind the stove and cried because she thought it was gone forever. Maya read bedtime stories, but Arya said Daddy does the voices better. A dagger softened by truth. Maya kissed their foreheads anyway. I'll practice voices before next time, she whispered. Later, when the girls finally slept, tangled like vines in one small bed, Maya sat beside them with her palm resting lightly on Ava's hair. And she cried. Not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming miracle of being trusted again. She texted Ethan. They're asleep. Safe. Thank you for letting me try. He stared at the message a long time before replying. Thank you for staying. Good night. Simple. Human. Real. At home, Ethan and Lena shared a quiet dinner for 2, the first in years without little voices interrupting. No chaos. No spilled milk. No arguments over whose cupcake is more chocolatey. Just plates, steam, the quiet hum of a fridge. For a moment, they ate in comfortable silence. Until Ethan set his fork down. Do you think they'll want more nights there? His voice cracked at the edge of the question. Lena reached across the table, fingers linking with his. I think love expands, not divides. If they have room for her, they'll still have room for you. He breathed, shaky, but relieved. And for you too, she added gently. His eyes softened. Yes. You're part of this now. With us. The words landed like warm sunlight on skin that had known too much winter. They washed dishes together, laughing softly when Lena flicked water at him with no tiny audience to giggle or imitate. Later, they curled up on the couch, watching a movie they never finished because talking felt better. Not dramatic. Not intense. Just 2 adults sharing space without the weight of survival for once. Peace, new, fragile, earned. Meanwhile, in the other apartment across town, Maya woke 3 times to check if the girls were still breathing. Motherhood learned late but fiercely. At dawn, Ava climbed into her bed, whispering. I missed Daddy a little. Maya kissed her hair. I do too. Missing people means they live in your heart. Arya sat up, sleepy-eyed. But we're here with you now. Maya nodded, tears she didn't hide this time. Yes. And it means more than you know. When Ethan picked them up the next morning, the twins came running, excited, radiant, unharmed. They smelled like pancakes and vanilla shampoo. They spoke over each other with stories to tell. We made cookies. Mima burned the first batch, but it was funny. We all slept in the same bed. And we watched a movie with dancing frogs. Ethan listened, heart swelling, relief, pride, bittersweet joy. He looked at Maya, and she looked back, eyes red but shining. One night. Success. Imperfect. Beautiful. Trust added its next layer. Lena watched too, soft smile, steady heart. Not threatened. Just grateful to be part of the circle. This was family now. Not simple. Not traditional. Not broken. Woven. Autumn came soft as a cardigan, threading gold through the trees and scattering leaves like confetti across sidewalks. Life, once jagged and trembling, now moved with steadier rhythm, not perfect, but human. And in that gentle forward motion, new chapters opened like unhurried doors. Weekends became rituals. Friday nights, pasta, messy sauce kisses on Ava's cheek, Arya trying to braid Lena's hair and ending with 9 tiny clips instead. Saturdays, therapy for Ethan, community center art class for the twins, soft afternoons where everyone existed without rushing. Sundays, shared video calls, all 5 of them, sometimes awkward, sometimes warm, always honest. One late afternoon, Ethan received a message from Maya. Incoming email symbol Maya. There's a retreat my therapist recommended, 3 weeks. Trauma recovery, group work, creative processing. I want to go. But I don't want to miss the girls. He stared at the screen for a long moment. Not because he doubted, but because progress, real progress, was quietly miraculous. Incoming email symbol Ethan. Go. We'll handle things here. Healing is a gift you give them too. When he read the reply, his eyes softened. Incoming email symbol Maya. Thank you. For trusting me to grow. And so she left, not escaping this time, but moving toward herself. During those 3 weeks, the house felt brighter. Not because Maya was gone, but because guilt was no longer a ghost hiding in corners. Instead, it was acknowledgement. Understanding. Space made for rebuilding. Ethan and Lena fell into a rhythm so natural it felt like muscle memory. Mornings. Coffee in shared silence, sunlight in Lena's curls, Ethan packing tiny apple slices into lunchboxes shaped like stars. Evenings. Homework at the kitchen table, Arya rambling about constellations, Ava declaring she'd be a firefly doctor, whatever that meant. And when the house slept, Ethan and Lena sat together, sometimes talking, sometimes simply breathing in the same room. Their relationship didn't rush into labels or declarations. It unfolded like pages turned carefully, read thoroughly. One night, rain pattered against the windows, soft applause from a sky heavy with memory. Lena traced circles on the mug she held. Ethan, she began, voice steady but searching, what are we to the girls? He looked at her not with uncertainty, but clarity earned through ache. We are home, he said gently. In all the shapes home can take. She let that settle, warm, expansive. Then she asked the harder one. And what are we to each other? He set his mug down, turned fully toward her. 2 people learning to love without fear, he answered. Not replacing history. Expanding it. Lena's breath trembled, not with doubt, but with relief. Because she didn't want perfect. She wanted honest. That night, she rested her head on his shoulder, not as declaration, but as ease. Later that month, Maya returned, steadier, eyes less frantic, voice grounded. The girls ran to her with practiced joy instead of desperation. She held them both, not clinging, but present. At dinner, she looked up and said something no one expected. I'd like to take them for a week. Just us. If you're okay with that. Ethan's fork paused midair. Not fear, just a father's instinctive hesitation. Lena reached under the table, gently squeezing his hand. He met Maya's gaze. Yes, he said. I think you're ready. And they are too. Maya's eyes glistened, not with sorrow, but gratitude. That week would come. It would hold laughter and maybe tears. But it would be earned, not rushed. Life, after all, was becoming something they tended, not something that happened to them. As autumn thickened, Ethan stepped into the backyard one evening, watching Lena teach the twins how to catch falling leaves. Maya's voice played faintly through a phone call on speaker, cheering them on. He stood there for a long time, letting the scene imprint itself like memory that deserved to stay. Not a perfect ending. A continuing, a breathing, evolving testament that love, when allowed to move slowly, becomes wide enough for everyone to fit inside. And for the first time in many years, Ethan felt no weight in his chest. Only space. Space for healing. Space for co-parenting with peace. Space for a love still in bloom, patient as sunrise. Not everything was resolved. Not everything was easy. But everything was growing. The first Sunday of winter break, the girls stood at the doorway in matching coats, Arya clutching her sketchbook, Ava holding a stuffed owl the size of her chest. Their excitement pulsed through the hallway like sunlight through windows. Maya arrived quietly. She didn't knock like a stranger, and she didn't enter like she owned the place. She stood with patience, with permission. "Hi, my loves," she said, kneeling so they could run into her arms. And they did, not with frantic grasping, but with joyful familiarity. Ethan watched, leaning on the doorframe. Beside him, Lena folded her hands, calm, supportive, the kind presence she'd been learning to become. Maya looked up. "You sure you're okay with this?" Her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan nodded. "You've worked for this. You deserve it. They deserve it." And with that, the week began. That first night, Maya took them to her apartment, small, warm, with walls decorated in newly framed photos. The twins explored like explorers discovering uncharted worlds, opening cabinets, peeking behind curtains, gasping at the view of city lights. Ava fell asleep on Maya's stomach during a movie. Arya stayed awake long enough to say before drifting off, "You feel different, Mom. Not scary different. Good different." Maya tucked a blanket around them, tears slipping, but soft, not breaking. Back at Ethan's house, the silence was new. Lena poured 2 mugs of tea, chamomile, his favorite. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same place where pain once lived. Now there was only quiet possibility. "It's strange without them," she said, fingers wrapped around her cup. Ethan nodded. "The house feels big." "Empty?" "No," he corrected gently. "Open." Their eyes held a conversation without speaking, a shared understanding that healing creates space, and space invites discovery. That night, they didn't fill the silence. They just existed in it together, peacefully. Midweek, Maya sent updates. Camera with flash photo 1. Arya painting in a sunlit studio, her hands covered in blue. Caption, "She's fearless with color." Camera with flash photo 2. Ava riding the grocery cart, laughing so loud the picture blurred. Caption, "She says she's practicing to be a race car driver." Ethan smiled harder than he expected. Pride warmed his chest instead of anxiety. Lena leaned on his shoulder as he showed her the pictures, her cheeks soft against fabric. "They look happy," she murmured. He exhaled. "They're safe. That's all I ever wanted." "And now they have more than safety," she said. "They have love in many forms." But growth isn't a straight line. On the 5th night, Maya called, shaken breath, voice trembling. Ava had a nightmare. Ethan felt his heart spike, old instinct, old fear. "Is she okay?" "Yes," Maya said, but her voice cracked. "She asked for you. And I didn't know how to soothe her the way you do." Ethan closed his eyes. Not frustration. Not judgment. Just understanding. "I'll talk to her," he said. Through the phone, he hummed the song Ava loved, slow, half lullaby, half heartbeat. Maya held the phone to Ava's ear, rocking her gently. Within minutes, the child's breathing softened into sleep. Maya whispered afterward, broken but beautiful, "I'm still learning." "And you're doing well," Ethan replied. "Learning takes time." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was respect. The week ended with return. Saturday evening, the door opened, the girls running in first, full of stories about painting classes, pancakes for dinner, building a pillow fort as tall as destiny, whatever that meant. Maya stepped inside more slowly. She wasn't a shadow returning to haunt history. She was a woman stepping into her rightful, reclaimed place. Ethan smiled, soft, steady. "You did good," he said, and meant it. Maya smiled back, not searching for approval, only receiving it. Lena joined them, placing 2 small watercolor drawings on the table, pieces the twins made at her encouragement. All 5 stood there, a shape not defined by labels but by effort. Co-parenting. Co-healing. Coexisting with grace. Then something small, but huge, happened. Arya took Maya's hand. Ava took Lena's. And both girls pulled their parents together in the middle. As if to say, we do not have to choose. We can belong to more than one love. The room held its breath, then exhaled into warmth. No fanfare. No perfection. Just a family, formed differently. But formed with intention. The week didn't fix everything. But it built trust. And trust builds future. After the twins returned, the house settled into a new rhythm, not the old one, not the broken one, but something steadier. The girls woke with stories of cities and paint and how Maya laughed louder than she used to. They slept easier, dreamt longer, moved through rooms without checking shadows first. And Ethan, for the first time in years, felt his heart unclench. Lena stayed for Sunday breakfast, as she often did now. She helped the girls measure pancake batter, holding their small hands steady as they poured flour and spilled sugar and giggled like bells in warm air. Ethan watched her, not with the nervousness of a man afraid to need someone, but with the quiet courage of one finally ready. They ate together at the table, sunlight filtering through curtains like melted gold. Ava, mouth sticky with syrup, suddenly announced, "Daddy likes Lena." Ethan almost choked on his orange juice. Arya didn't look up from her plate. "We know." Lena froze, a strawberry halfway to her mouth. She glanced at Ethan, not panicked, not embarrassed. Just waiting. He wiped his hands on a napkin, breath steady, heart loud but sure. "You're right," he said to his daughters, not to hide, not to whisper, but to be honest. "I do like Lena. A lot. And we're taking things slowly. Carefully. Like planting a garden, we want it to grow right." Ava grinned. "So, can we call her Mom number 2? Lena's eyes softened, but she shook her head gently. "Not yet, sweetheart. Maybe someday, only if you feel it, not because you're told to." Arya nodded thoughtfully, the way old souls do in tiny bodies. "So Lena can be Lena," she declared. "And we love her like Lena." Simple. True. Ethan reached across the table, fingers brushing Lena's, not hidden beneath the wood but on top, visible to little eyes watching. It was the first time he held her hand openly in front of the girls. Warm. Real. Not a secret anymore. And nothing fell apart. A week later, Ethan and Lena made it official, not with grand gestures, just with a gentle conversation on the porch while the twins played hopscotch on the driveway. "We can do this," Ethan said, thumb stroking the back of her hand. "Yes," Lena breathed, eyes shining like dusk. "Slow. Honest. With room for everyone who matters." They leaned into each other, foreheads touching, not kissing, just resting. A moment like a held breath. Love, not lightning. Growth, not fireworks. That night, Ethan texted Maya, not asking permission, but extending respect. "Lena and I are officially together. Still slow. Still gentle. We'll make sure the girls always feel safe." Maya read the message 3 times before responding. "Thank you for telling me. The girls deserve a happy father. I hope she makes you feel alive." He felt relief, not because she approved, but because the story no longer needed to hide chapters. The next school event was the real test. A winter recital, children in glittery paper crowns, singing off-key about snowflakes that didn't exist in their sunny town. Chairs filled the gymnasium, parents murmuring, cameras ready. Ethan arrived with the twins holding each hand. Lena walked beside them, not holding anyone, not claiming space. Just present. Maya joined them moments later, smiles, nerves, healing still in progress. She stood on the other side of the girls. People watched. Whispers flickered through the crowd like wind. "Is that the mom? Who is the other woman? Are they all together?" For a heartbeat, Ethan felt the old fear stir, the fear of judgment, failure, imbalance. Then Arya slipped one hand into Maya's, one into Lena's. Ava smiled back at Ethan with syrup-bright joy. And just like that, the whispers didn't matter. They were a family. A different shape. A wider circle. A story still being written without hiding its ink. The girls stood on stage, 2 tiny stars in silver paper crowns, and sang with all the courage in their lungs. Ethan felt Lena's hand find his. Maya wiped a tear she didn't hide. No brokenness. No rivalry. Just love forming a home with more than 4 walls. Later at dismissal, the teacher smiled carefully at the 4 adults. "You have a beautiful family. No labels. No confusion. Just truth." Arya beamed. "We're a big puzzle. And nobody is missing anymore." 3 grown-ups looked at each other. Tears, laughter, disbelief. A puzzle, imperfect yet complete. Ethan pulled Lena into his side, Not discreet, not hesitant, grounded in choice. Maya stood with them instead of behind them. No one replaced. No one erased. Everyone valued. A family remade, soft as snowfall, strong as oak, slow as healing. This story reminds us that family isn't defined by perfection, it's shaped by grace, growth, and the courage to love again. Because sometimes, moving forward doesn't mean breaking apart. It means learning to move forward together. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to support more stories like this. And tell us in the comments, what part of the story moved you the most? Your engagement helps us bring even more powerful stories to life. Thanks for watching.